Coming out of college, Sam Darnold was one of the most highly sought-after players in the entire 2018 NFL Draft. He was selected over players like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Fred Warner, and Minkah Fitzpatrick, and while that might seem silly now, nobody knew what was in store back then. Now, despite all the hype he had coming into the league, he almost played himself out a little over 5 seasons into his NFL career. But you wouldn't know it by watching him on the Vikings in this current 2024 season. I mean, he looks like a completely different player than we have ever seen in the past.
Darnold looks, throws it, caught! Darnold again with time, into the end zone, caught, touchdown!
I would have thought all you were crazy if you would have told me that we're going to be making a video covering the revival of Sam Darnold in the 2024 season, but here we are. With Sam Darnold dominating so far in this 2024 season, you might think to yourself, I'd love to see this guy play in person instead of just on TV, or maybe you want to get out of the house with some friends, just go see another one of your favorite teams, whether it's the MLB, NHL, or NBA, it doesn't matter because today's sponsor has you covered, it's SeatGeek. I just recently used SeatGeek to go to the Eagles Monday night game against the Falcons where we choked away the lead with under a minute left. Absolutely amazing stuff. But the seats were great thanks to their easy to read maps telling which seats are good deals and which ones aren't so much. Dark green dots are what you want to focus on for the great deals, while the red dots aren't the best prices for that location. Everybody can use my new code FANTASYPHENOMS10 for 10% off any tickets on SeatGeek, whether you're a new customer or not. Pull out your phone and download the SeatGeek app, or go on SeatGeek.com and use code FANTASYPHENOMS10 for 10% off any tickets. Huge thanks to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video. Sam Darnold was born on June 5th, 1997 in Dana Point, California to Chris and Michael Darnold. Both his parents were extremely talented athletes, with his father playing offensive lineman at the University of Redlands, while his mom was a volleyball player at Long Beach City College. Growing up, Sam was encouraged to pursue any sport that he so desired. For some time, it actually appeared that his true calling was going to be basketball. After dropping baseball following his freshman year at San Clemente High School, he focused on basketball and football. On the basketball court, he was named the South Coast League's most valuable player 2 times, averaging 14.8 points, 9.1 rebounds, 3.2 assists, and 2.3 steals per game those seasons. His high school basketball coach saw something very special in him and believed that he was capable of playing basketball for a Pac-12 school. Along with this, there were some very distinct skills that clearly carried over from the football field for Darnold. Most notably, the ability to throw full court passes more accurately than any player that he'd ever coached before. Interestingly, Darnold began his high school football career playing on both sides of the ball, wide receiver on offense and linebacker on defense. But he got an opportunity that went on to change his life in his sophomore year. After San Clemente's starting quarterback went down with an injury, Darnold took over the starting spot and never looked back. After a promising sophomore season, he suffered a foot injury that kept him sidelined for the majority of his junior year. Despite this, he came back better than ever in his senior season, leading the team to the CIF Southern Section Southwest Division Championship game. While his team came up just short, this in part was due to Darnold being forced to leave the game early with a concussion. While his high school career ended on a sad note, Darnold still posted very impressive stats in his senior season, throwing for 2,985 yards and 39 touchdowns, while also picking up an additional 785 yards and 13 touchdowns on the ground. After an elite senior season, Darnold was one of the most sought-after recruits in the entire class of 2015. ESPN gave him a 4-star rating, along with ranking him as the 8th best quarterback in the class, along with being the 115th best recruit overall. As a result of this, he was receiving attention from big schools. He received offers from Oregon, Tennessee, Utah, and USC. He ultimately decided to remain in his home state of California and become a USC Trojan. Interestingly, despite being a 4-star recruit at quarterback, USC defensive coordinator Justin Wilcox did everything in his power to get Darnold to switch over to the linebacker position. This was the position that he started his high school career at, but Darnold knew the talent that he possessed at quarterback and decided to prove himself. USC had a loaded QB room at the time, led by future 3rd-round pick Cody Kessler. As a result of this, Darnold wound up being redshirted in what would have been his freshman season. Even after sacrificing a year due to being redshirted, he still had to wait even longer before getting a chance to start at quarterback for his dream school. In the 2016 season, Max Brown began the season as the team's starter. Fortunately for Darnold, though, this ended up being a failed experiment, with Brown leading the team to a measly 1-2 record in the first 3 games of the season. In his debut as the team's starter, the Trojans faced off against a Utah team that was ranked 24th in the country. Now, he didn't blow away anybody in this matchup, but for a debut, it was not a bad performance by any means. He threw for 253 yards while picking up an additional 41 yards and a touchdown on the ground. USC came up just a bit short of a win, barely falling by a final score of 31-27. But this loss, in what would have been a storybook debut for the hometown kid, lit a fire under him, and he looked like an extremely different player through the remainder of the season. He refused to be defeated again, and the Trojans did not lose another game for the remainder of the 2016 season. To pull this off, they were forced to take down 21st ranked Colorado, 4th ranked Washington, and 5th ranked Penn State. This win over Washington was arguably the most impressive of the entire season. Not only did USC come into the game as huge underdogs, they also had to win this one on the road. While this was a roller coaster of a game for Darnold, throwing 2 touchdowns but also throwing 2 interceptions, USC came out on top by a final score of 26-13. This game put him on the map, one of the most promising young talents at the quarterback position in all of college football. USC went on to finish their 2016 campaign against Penn State in the Rose Bowl. This was more or less a home game for the Trojans, with the game taking place roughly 15 miles away from their home stadium. Despite this, they faced a very tough opponent in the Nittany Lions, who at the time had a star running back by the name of Saquon Barkley and a great receiver you might recognize by the name of Chris Godwin. This game wound up being a shootout, with both sides combining for 101 points. It came down to the wire, but Darnold reached a new level in this game, came up clutch. It was by far his best performance of the season, and it came on one of the biggest stages. He looked far more like a seasoned vet than someone who was coming off the bench at the beginning of the year. By the end of this game, he had totaled an impressive 453 yards and 5 touchdowns through the air, while only throwing 1 interception on his 53 pass attempts. USC narrowly came out on top by a final score of 52-49, and if the game against Washington didn't put Darnold on everybody's radar, this coming out party in the Rose Bowl certainly did. He finished the season throwing for 3,086 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, while picking up an additional 250 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Heading into his redshirt sophomore year at USC, the hype for Darnold was at an all-time high. He came out of nowhere the previous season to become one of the top quarterbacks in all of college football. Many projected with Darnold at the helm, USC was going to be one of the toughest teams to beat, and they entered the season as the 4th ranked team in the country. While they had a cakewalk in week number 1 to open up the season against Western Michigan, Darnold greatly struggled, failing to find the end zone through the air and being picked off 2 times. Despite the rough opening day performance from their quarterback, the Trojans still won that game 49-31. Their first real test of the year came in the following week against 14th ranked Stanford. This wound up being a huge blowout in USC's favor, coming out on top by a final score of 42-24. Darnold looked like an entirely different player in this game compared to the week prior, throwing for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. While the Trojans hung around a top 5 ranking, the house of cards began to fall when they took on 16th ranked Washington State. This was another rough day from Darnold through the air, failing for the second time this season to throw for a touchdown. Along with this, the rest of the team was unable to pick up the slack, and USC fell by a final score of 30-27. This tough loss dropped them all the way down to 14th in the top 25 rankings. It was a couple of weeks before they got a chance to redeem themselves in another top 15 matchup, getting their chance against 13th ranked Notre Dame. But unfortunately, once again, they failed to seize the moment. This time, USC was dismantled, falling by a final score of 49-14. It's very tough to try to pin the entire loss on Darnold here. He did have a decent showing against a very talented Notre Dame defense, throwing for 229 yards and 2 touchdowns. This loss, though, more or less guaranteed that the Trojans were not going to make the college football playoffs in what was set to be a year of destiny for them. While they failed to make the playoffs, they did make an appearance in the Cotton Bowl, taking on 5th ranked Ohio State. This was a star-studded Buckeye defense that featured 3 future top 5 picks in Nick Bosa, Chase Young, and Denzel Ward. While Denzel Ward ultimately sat out of this game, Ohio State still featured an elite pass rush that made Darnold's final game at USC one that he would rather forget.
Design rollout for Darnold, behind Burnett. Another blitz, a rollout for Darnold, off his back foot to the sideline, incomplete. Third down and long. Darnold under pressure and sacked. Sam Hubbard again. Man rush. Darnold under pressure, hit from behind. The ball's out. Is it another USC giveaway?
This was a very sour note for him to go out on, throwing for 356 yards, 0 touchdowns, and an interception. Along with this, USC was buried by a final score of 24-7. Despite the rough end of the year, Darnold still had a very great season, finishing his 2017 campaign recording 4,143 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions through the air, while picking up an additional 82 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. He led the Pac-12 in passing yards, but he also led the conference in interceptions as well. Heading into the 2018 NFL Draft, scouts could not get enough of Darnold. He was given a 7.1 prospect rank out of 8 by NFL.com, and he was deemed a future Pro Bowl talent. Many believe that he was set to be a top 3 pick, with some going as far to say that he could go number 1 off the board. He was drawing comparisons to Andrew Luck at the time, and it also seemed guaranteed that Darnold was well on his way to being the future face of a franchise. After the Cleveland Browns and New York Giants selected Baker Mayfield and Saquon Barkley respectively, the New York Jets did not hesitate at all to snatch up Darnold with the 3rd overall pick. Now, many believe that the Jets could not have found a better player with this pick, and they just found their franchise quarterback here. However, knowing what we know now, this pick was a blown opportunity, with the team passing on both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Darnold's NFL debut took place in week number 1 when the Jets took on the Lions. This game was a solid start for Darnold, throwing for 198 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He looked like the real deal right out of the gates, and the Jets won by a huge margin, coming out on top by a final score of 48-17. But with it only being his rookie year, there was bound to be some ups and downs. Following an impressive debut, he came right back down to earth in the next 2 games against the Dolphins and the Browns. Over this 2-game stretch, Darnold was only able to find the end zone once through the air, while throwing 2 interceptions in each game.
Airs it out, downfield, pass is picked.
This continued to be an up and down season throughout the first half of the year, before he eventually hit rock bottom in week 9 when New York took on Miami for the 2nd time. This was one of the worst games of Darnold's entire career at any level.
The throw on 1st down, taking a deep shot for Curse, and it's nearly intercepted. Darnold on the slant, almost intercepted. Darnold to Curse, he dropped it.
He had no answer for the Dolphins defense in this one, and his offensive line was not doing him any favors. He was sacked 4 times in this game.
Darnold in trouble. Darnold is sacked. Darnold nowhere to go, in trouble, and he's going down.
Was only able to complete 53.9% of his pass attempts, failed to throw for a touchdown, and was picked off 4 times.
Is coming. Darnold steps up, picked off. McDonald on the run. Throws it deep in the direction of Curse, and it's intercepted.
But the cherry on top, despite the inability of Darnold to get anything going, the Jets defense still kept them in this game until the very end. They only ended up losing 13-6. He missed the following 3 games with a sprained foot injury, and in the following few games that he returned in, he had to go head-to-head with Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, and Aaron Rodgers. A rookie Darnold surprisingly held his own in each of these 3 matchups, especially against the Packers, where he torched them for 341 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions, setting a season high in passing yards and tying his season high in passing touchdowns.
Darnold to McGuire. Elijah McGuire inside the 5, the end zone.
Despite this very promising performance from Darnold, the Jets still went home with a 44-38 loss. While his rookie season definitely had its low points, it wound up being a solid showing from a rookie quarterback, throwing for 2,865 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. The 2019 season was one that was remembered much less favorably for Darnold than it actually was. Following a solid opening week to the season, he missed the next 3 games after he caught mono. While he had a very solid comeback from this in week number 6 against Dallas, arguably the lowest point of his entire career came in the next game against the Patriots. While in the past, he had some of his biggest performances when the lights were the brightest, like his elite showing against Penn State in the Rose Bowl, Darnold did not show up in this Monday night matchup against a very tough, undefeated New England Patriots team. This was even worse than his game against the Dolphins the year prior.
Pressure off the edge. Ball is out, and the Patriots have it. Kyle Van Noy on the return. Inside the 5 and walks it in.
He was only able to complete 34.4% of his pass attempts. To make matters somehow worse, he only mustered up 86 yards through the air and threw 4 interceptions.
Picked off again. They let him get it off. Pressure off the edge. Floater and another interception. First down inside the 2. Floated again and picked off.
It was clear that something was going on in this game, and Darnold was unfortunately caught on a hot mic telling someone that he was seeing ghosts.
Seeing ghosts.
While this is a hilarious quote, it also pointed to a bigger issue that had greatly been holding him back throughout his stint with the Jets. This being that his offensive line time and time again would keep letting him down. In one game this season, he suffered 8 sacks in a single game. The ghost that he was referring to in this quote was sensing pass rushers and feeling like he was about to get sacked when in reality, no one was there. Now, despite these ghosts throughout the season, Darnold still had one of his best statistical years. He threw for 3,024 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions while leading the Jets to a winning 7-6 record as a starter. While there were some promising moments in his first 2 years as a Jet, the same could not be said about the 2020 season. Almost everything that could have went wrong did. He suffered through a sprained shoulder for the majority of the year, and it was obvious that this was having a negative effect on his passing. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns this season and led New York to a horrendous 2-10 record as a starter. In the offseason, after just 3 years with the team, the Jets had finally seen enough and were ready to get rid of the player who was meant to be one day their franchise quarterback. Darnold was traded to the Carolina Panthers for a 2021 6th-round pick, along with a 2nd and a 4th-round pick of the 2022 draft. Many believe that a change of scenery was exactly what Darnold needed. However, he quickly proved even his biggest optimists wrong here. Somehow, he had an even worse season through the air than he did the previous year with the Jets. He once again suffered another shoulder injury that could be the explanation for why he finished the season with only 9 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. In the offseason, the Panthers traded for Baker Mayfield, and it appeared that Darnold had already played himself out of ever being a starting quarterback again. Things went from bad to worse for him when he suffered an ankle sprain that kept him on IR until week number 9.
That's one of those where you get up and you think you're okay, and you go back down because your mind says, I'm good, but your body says, boy, you better sit back down.
Despite being healthy, Darnold still had to wait almost another month before he saw the field in any action. He looked like a completely different player, though, in his return, which was great.
He keeps Darnold to the end zone, a massive Panthers touchdown.
In his 6 starts, he led the Panthers to a 4-2 record while throwing for 1,143 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. While it appeared that the tides could finally be turning for Darnold and he may end up being a starting caliber player after all, there was not much of a market for him in free agency. This led to him signing with the San Francisco 49ers to back up Brock Purdy. While this was a much less glorious role than any other one that he's had since his freshman year of high school, he took it in stride. It appears that sitting back and learning while practicing with a bunch of elite weapons was exactly what Darnold needed. He only had 1 start in the 2023 season where he had a pretty solid showing.
Comes up throwing, Ronnie Bell, fingertip.
No longer having the pressure to turn around a dying franchise appeared to take the weight off his shoulders. He was playing much more relaxed.
Oh, they're trying to throw to that side. It's deflected and it's picked off. Darnold
Couple of clutches, tight window toss. It is a touchdown to Ronnie Bell.
This past offseason, he left the 49ers and signed with the Vikings, expecting to take a backup role to rookie JJ McCarthy. But following an injury to McCarthy, Darnold was given the starting job, and he has proved all the doubters wrong thus far. Many believe that the Vikings season had come to a premature end following that injury to their rookie quarterback. However, 4 weeks into the season, Darnold has statistically been one of the best at the position. He's already thrown for 932 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions while completing 68.9% of his pass attempts. Along with this, he's led Minnesota to an undefeated 4-0 record, and 3 out of 4 of these games have not been easy matchups. Sorry to all those Giants fans out there. Week number 2, they beat a very talented 49ers team, even with all their injuries.
Saw one that back the pass. Darnold long. Oh, he caught it. Naylor caught it.
Week number 3, they dismantled what I thought was a very good Texans team, 34-7. Then in week 4, they beat a solid all-around Packers team, 31-29. If he is able to keep up this level of play for the remainder of the season, Darnold has likely found himself a new home with the Vikings. Now, these elite performances from Darnold week after week so far have been coming out of seemingly nowhere. Even his biggest supporters probably couldn't have seen this one coming. Currently leads the entire league in passing touchdowns, and the Vikings offense has not missed a beat after replacing Kirk Cousins last year. It's going to be very interesting to see if they can keep this up throughout the remainder of the year. However, if they can, Minnesota could be an extremely dangerous team this year. Some are even calling Darnold a dark horse candidate for MVP. Also, for all my fantasy football guys out there, Justin Jefferson has been killing it. And all the haters out there during the offseason said that with Darnold at quarterback, Jetta was going to fall off. Well, look at where we are now. The Vikings defense also looks much improved this season to go along with it. I am very curious to see how this is going to play out for Minnesota heading into the rest of the year. Let me know in the comment section down below right now what you think Minnesota's record is going to be at the end of this year.